Welcome to First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, the birthplace of congregational humanism. We carry on that tradition of free thought today, dedicated to promoting a free search for truth, meaning, and justice. Our web address is firstunitarian.org. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, I'm Mikki Morrissette. For those that don't know, I'm the editor and publisher of Minnesota Women's Press. And I've had the honor of speaking. This will be my 10th summer talk here. So I recently found the first speech I gave here at First Unitarian Society. It was, as I said, 2015, when I set the stage for a theme that's largely been part of every talk I've given since, about how we are not the self-sufficient individual lives we think we are. We are all manifestations of the entangled elements of the Big Bang, emerging from oozing goo and gases. Carl Sagan's more poetic term was that we all descend from stardust. We were not simply plopped down in a garden to eat fruit and invent clothing. I also have suggested that what fuels the universe is the energy and vibration that moves and morphs and merges every grouping of stardust. We tend to fix on what we can see and touch, but astronaut Edgar Mitchell realized that when he was in space, there's an energy field that transcends what science typically measures and categorizes. In human terms, I characterize that energy as someone's looking out for me, and I them. I've also talked about how that sense of care can come from strangers who never know the impact that they have. I've shared here one of my favorite stories, cited in a book by Rachel Naomi Remen, about how an elderly woman on a New York City street corner, waiting for the light to change, overheard an abusive man chastising his wife. The elderly woman turned and simply told the man that he was a jerk and went on her merry way. She didn't know that her comment sparked a realization in the wife that she needed to leave her marriage. That woman saved money, left her husband, and became a domestic violence advocate. Today, our world is not healthy. Mental health issues are high. We're in the midst of a very stressful election year. Women are losing reproductive health rights all around the country. Not here, right now. LGBTQ security is not assured. The Middle East, Sudan, and Ukraine are all burning. The Supreme Court has ruled that homelessness is a crime, as Jay brought up last week. The climate continues, as it did again last night, I think, to warn us that we don't own this planet. But we are stardust. That means we're always transforming. This year, on this stage, I have the answer to our evolution.
Come on,
It has something to do with blues music. So hold that thought. This was my house a few months ago. In the great hail damage of August 11th, 2023, I was one of hundreds of homes that have since kept roofing crews busy. The work on mine lasted a few months because I also had insurance money to replace damaged siding. When the crew tore it off, they discovered solid cedar planks from the original house, built more than 100 years ago, that were in good shape. So rather than put new siding on, they restored what was already there, repaired spots that had rot, and overall did a fantastic job transforming my house. It now looks like this. Yay. It's easy for us to recognize the power of tender, loving repair when it comes to material things, that we can transform an existing structure into something stronger without simply tearing it down. It is less easy to remember that people can be transformed in the same way. The energy of a small village, or sometimes just a stranger on a street corner, can apply tender, loving repair to reshape life. There were at least a dozen people working on my house over time. I got to know a crew of 3 fairly well because I hired them to do repair work inside my house to prepare for the Ukrainian family that arrived at my place on July 1st. A fabulous team, by the way, of 15 people from First Unitarian Society, led by Bob Adderholt, is helping that family transform their lives here. It's a great example of how a village forms to give other people a new foothold. I could give a lovely talk about that, but I do have a different focus today. The 3 men in their 30s who worked on the exterior and then interior of my house all had addiction issues. This is not uncommon in that industry. They lived together, worked together, and partied together. One of them was ready to quit that lifestyle. Travis has given me permission to share his story today. Travis grew up sleeping on the floor of a mobile home in Lakeville. He showed me his neighborhood a few weeks ago. He signed up for the Marines at age 17 and experienced hearing loss driving vehicles, which I now know are called 7 tons, to burn pits during the Iraq War. He used drugs to deal with a tumultuous childhood and PTSD from the war, to feel numb from grief, and to feel momentary joy on the emptier weeks when he did not have custody of his young son. Travis lost his dad last year to an opioid overdose, which is also how one of his closest friends died. He was very close to his cousin Sarah, who committed suicide years ago at age 24. Alcoholism is prevalent in his family. His addiction was cocaine. When we get up close and personal with people, it's easier to remember that no one is simply one thing. Travis's story is not only about addiction. I've seen it up close. Travis also is a fantastic dad to his very curious, artistic, and adoring 8-year-old son, James. I'm so happy they were able to be here today. I invited Travis to my home in April for dinner with one of my staff members and her husband. My coworker also is a vet who came from a rough childhood. We talked about Travis's life and the vet's benefits he could be claiming. Travis needs legal advice because his home is in foreclosure. His ex has been backtracking on their 50-50 custody agreement. When they split up, he offered to pay child support despite the equal time arrangement because he made decent money at the time. After he lost his construction job last year, he took work with a friend that was much less well paid, and he fell behind in payments. His driver's license was taken away a few months ago because he could no longer afford child support. A policy, by the way, that I do not understand. Can somebody explain to me that the rationale for taking away transportation from someone who's supposed to be earning money? I don't get that. Travis was so impacted by the attention he got that night at my house, he's told me, that his life and needs mattered to people he didn't know, that after I drove him back home that night and he found another party going on, Travis realized he didn't want to stay there anymore. He came back to Minneapolis with me and stayed for 5 days until he could make a new plan. He slept deeply, he talked deeply, he wept deeply. I even saw him laugh deeply for the first time when we went to hear Burning Blue Rain and Lewis's mother said something funny and bold. It was an incredibly vulnerable 5 days. Now a new village is forming around Travis. He's building his own construction business to be able to keep more of the funds that used to go to his bosses, to be able to pay people who also need a village. Our own FUS realtor, Bob Gendreau, put him in touch with Adele Hansen to polish her wood floor and is suggesting other work. My neighbor hired him to build a deck. My friend Barbara in Northfield, who's listening, is introducing him to locals who need work done. He's contacted previous employers to bid on framing garages and new homes. Because everything can be transformed with the help of a village, because we all need to know that someone's looking after me and I them. In May, I talked to 5 women corrections officers and social workers in Brainerd at the Crow Wing County Jail. One of them was featured in our June issue. Christy Tetzloff is a corrections officer who's worked at the jail for 20 years. She said people can get paid better with easier jobs, like at Walmart. So I asked why she's stayed there for so long. Christy said, because I love the fact that I can help people. You see them at their worst, then you see them a day or two later, and it's a totally different person who's apologizing for what has happened and what they did. I know the person who came in was not who they are. I talked to them about educational options that we have in the jail. For me, it's because I think that there's always hope, though some days it is harder to see the hope. Most people in the jail are there because they have mental health and chemical dependency issues. One of the social workers said, I've had clients tell me, you can send me to chemical dependency treatment all you want, and they're going to teach me how to identify my triggers and use some coping skills, but the reasons I'm using are not being addressed. It can take 6 months for someone to move out of jail and into the proper mental health facility because there are no openings. Yet in 2020, Minnesota spent $632 million on the prison system. I recently wrote about the documentary Beyond the Bridge, which offers a deep look at the roots and resilience of realities of homelessness. They talk to people about why they were homeless and their resilience. A woman said it was hard to afford rent with a 3-year-old and a wage of $8.75. One man said the hostility toward him because he has no home has been heartless. I was sitting at a train station and a dad had his kids throwing rocks at me. Another said, would you hire me if I didn't have a place to take a bath? I hosted a Minnesota Women's Press Forum on this stage last month about mental health. Dr. Rachel Hardiman said, we have to understand that health care doesn't just happen within the hospital or clinic setting. A larger percentage of our well-being comes from the social environment in which we live. I was at a workshop in Northfield recently led by one of my favorite and Phil Duran's favorite people, Ellie Krug. She asked, if we saw someone sobbing on a park bench, how many of us would introduce ourselves and ask if the person wants to talk about whatever's upsetting them? At Peace House in Minneapolis, unhoused people gather at lunchtime for food and conversation with volunteers, because how many unhoused people get invited to dinner and to socialize? Every life deserves and needs a village. That's how transformation happens. And all of us do have tools to contribute: listening, food, a construction job, because everyone needs to know someone's looking out for me and I them. We also need to know where to find our moments of joy. Over the past 9 months, I've been incredibly stressed about the ability of our print magazine business to survive. One day in February, on a Sunday afternoon, I walked into KJ Hideaways in St. Paul because I'd received a news release among hundreds I receive weekly that I paid attention to. It was promoting an afternoon of music from a young blues band. There's nothing that stirs my emotions more than good blues guitar, so I went. And that's when I heard Louis play, and my stress melted away. I'm incredibly grateful that Louis and Oliver agreed to come here today on a Sunday morning to something that sort of looks like a church to play their music. Louis started playing guitar during the pandemic. It was not his intention to impact the stress level of a stranger, but his music sparked joy that has done so much for my mental health. Thank you. From that spark, musicians have introduced me to 4 venues where I can go when I need to de-stress. One of them is the Blues Saloon in East St. Paul, which is home every Tuesday night to a blues jam session. Musicians sign up and are called on stage to play a song or two with random others. It fills up after 9 p.m. with swing dancers. I want you to see this in action, and thank you, Jacob, for queuing this up. The music and dance is great to watch and hear, but what makes it magical to me is the unscripted nature of it. Random strangers intersect to simply create and experience joy on a weekly basis. No one person gets to shine, even when they're highly skilled. It's more about the village than a leader. It's not about following certain notes, but about feeling shared moments of raw emotion that emanate from guitar strings, piano keys, drum beats, and more. Although there is no star on jam session nights, there is one blues guitarist I enjoyed seeing each week. The first time I talked to Jack at the club, he said how important it was for his mental health to show up at a place where it doesn't matter who you are, what you do during the day, or what your beliefs are, where an elderly couple might be dancing next to two guys. Jack sat down with me for 3 hours recently, talking about how it works to play music with people of different levels and experiences. I wanted to understand how improvisation works. How do people intersect peacefully, even when someone might twirl the wrong way or is not quite keeping up to the tempo? What I learned from Jack is that the culture encourages people to laugh about mistakes, to teach instead of preach. You put a hand on someone's back to gently let them know what to do next. You give a slight nod of the head or a look to indicate, hey, you do a solo now. It's your turn to shine. Jack says that it's not about forcing your will, for example, on some new bass player who doesn't know how to do all the changes. The idea is to simply help everyone have moments to shine, flaws and all. The club is not perfect. There are occasional dramas that cause discomfort. When that happens, Jack says, a team might appear, including the elders, to indicate that objectionable behavior does not belong. The team doesn't bark or pound on their chests to intervene. They calmly indicate that in order to be in the community, inclusive and respectful behavior is required. It works because people want to be part of a village, not to be ostracized or locked out. Since Travis is now a good friend of mine, I picked up a book by Sebastian Junger that was recommended to me, Tribe, to better understand the mentality of a different kind of village, people in the military who learn to trust each other. Junger wrote, in combat, soldiers all but ignored differences of race, religion, and politics within their platoon. It's no wonder many of them get so depressed when they come home. Junger wrote about a collective time that I experienced up close. I lived in New York City, a few blocks from the World Trade Center, when it was attacked on September 11th. I saw the dust clouds as the buildings went down. I saw that giant city stand still, strangers huddled around taxicabs, trying to figure out what happened. I saw memorials go up, pictures of loved ones with notes. Have you seen this person? The slow motion of collective grief lasted for months. Junger's research found that New York's suicide rate dropped by 20% in the 6 months following the attacks. The murder rate dropped by 40%. Pharmacists saw no increase in first-time patients filling prescriptions for anti-anxiety and antidepressant medications. In other words, the nature of the collective good, banding together, alleviated many of the symptoms we are increasingly experiencing in an unhealthy world. Junger wrote, "We are not good to each other. Our tribalism is to an extremely narrow group of people, our children, our spouse, maybe our parents. Our society is alienating, cold, mystifying. Our fundamental desire as human beings is to be close to others, and our society does not allow for that. My privilege as a writer is to listen to people's stories. Sometimes I write about addictions and mental health and abusive environments from afar. And I've stood up on this stage for 10 years, essentially talking about how our resilience comes from being part, not apart, from our village. That if we could see that our energy comes from the whole, not the individual, we would have a much healthier world. But I'm going to be honest, I myself am a very protective individual. I avoid conflict, I sidestep pain, I basically avoid intimate relationships when you look someone in the eye and tell your truth. People I interview tell me their truths. I sit in the corner and observe, I take notes. I purposely raised 2 kids on my own, and I'm now an empty nester who misses them. My resilience with business struggles comes from a childhood with 2 supportive parents and the resources they have provided. Travis is extremely grateful that his stepping stone in my house helped him relaunch the future he wants to provide for his son. He says that someday he'll repay me for opening up a door he was so ready to walk through. But he's already repaid me. Travis is a 36-year-old former Marine with tattoos who smokes, watches boxing, relaxes by watching war movies, drives big trucks, and has had issues with cocaine. He also is the person who has shown me how to be vulnerable, because we are not simply one thing. He's become a great text buddy when he doesn't let his phone die and when he's not with his son James. He makes me laugh deeply when we talk on the phone. When I was agitated a few times lately, he was the one I reached out to. When I was overwhelmed with the culmination of bad news, tough news, I called him and cried. It's a profound gift to have someone you can be your ugly self with. Some people build those trusting relationships easily, and I do not. Everyone needs to know that when we let go for a little while, someone is there, that someone is looking out for me and I them. For people without a tribe, it might need to be strangers in the community who will notice them in distress on a park bench, who will make a comment at a street corner to offer a needed perspective, who will introduce them to the right people to talk about how to get out of a hole. We can discover our talent, play music at KJ Hideaway or Blues Saloon, and make someone's day. We can create a village with others to help a Ukrainian family get a foothold. We are all part of the solution. We all need to know someone is looking out for me and me them, even if they're strangers. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. You can find much more about humanism and what's happening at First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis by visiting our website at firstunitarian.org.